Welcome to the Big Ben Show with me, Lester Holloway and Alex Watson. Plenty coming up in this programme. We're talking politics today, as we always are. Labour have now selected for the general election just over 50 black and Asian candidates. But how are they doing in comparison to the Conservatives? Well, I happen to know the Conservatives have around 30, but many of those in safe or winnable seats. So are the Conservatives catching up with Labour? We'll be asking David Lammy, the Labour MP for Tottenham, this question, and also David Lammy is campaigning, or it will be campaigning, to run for Labour Mayor of London. We'll be talking to him about that as well. We'll also be having a live link in with the launch of Operation Black Vote's registration battle bus, which is taking place right now in Windrush Square. A few other headlines going on in the world of politics. Labour have selected Kate Osamor to fight the safe Labour seat of Edmonton. That follows about 30 years ago her mother, Martha Osamor, didn't quite make it and was deselected as a candidate in Vauxhall. So her daughter has made it. Other news, Amina Ali, who is of Somali origin and a Tower Hamlets councillor, resigned as a Labour candidate for Bradford West just 72 hours after she was selected, for citing family commitments. However, there have been rumours that there's been a bit of a bust-up with local members. And also for the Conservatives, Rachel Johnson, the sister of the current Mayor, Boris Johnson, has indicated that she may run for the Conservative nomination for Mayor of London, but she says only if Parliament can stand another Johnson. Of course, there's also been speculation that Boris Johnson's father, Stanley Johnson, may also stand for Parliament. So that would make 5 Johnsons, which means that at least Boris Johnson can count on 5 votes if he stands as leader of the Conservative Party at some later date, assuming, of course, that he remembers to vote for himself. Joined, of course, by Alex Watson, as usual. Now, it's struck me that, in all the past appearances that you've made as co-presenter, I haven't actually properly introduced you. You're, of course, a singer as well. Oh, yes, I am. I didn't know you were going to bring that up, yes. I'm a singer-songwriter with a band called Bastido. And we should be having some new material out soon, so watch this space. Okay. Do you want to give us a little excerpt of one of your songs? Wow. Another Friday night spent online. It's really taking up all your time. Get out, go see, be free. Or are you just too busy to give yourself to me? That's beautiful. Thank you, Alex. That was so cheeky, Lester. The reason why I didn't say really in advance, because you would have probably said no. So. Exactly. But thank you. Anyway, can you believe you did that? Great. It was great. Great to hear. Thanks. Really great if you do that every week, actually. Okay, I'll think of something. Now, we're going to be joined in just a second by David Lammy. Of course, he was selected for Labour in Tottenham and voted in 2000, following in the footsteps of Bernie Grant, the late Bernie Grant, who died at the time. David Lammy is 27, which made him the baby of the House, and he also went on in the previous Labour government to be a Minister for Universities and Culture, and he also chairs the all-party parliamentary group on race. Welcome to the show, David. Hi, good to be here. Okay, hi. First of all, I wanted to ask you, what really brought you into politics in the first place, and what was your first memory of politics? Well, I grew up in the seat I represent here in Tottenham, and it was during the 70s and 80s. It was a very typical West Indian immigrant family. There was a lot of fun, a lot of music, a lot of food. But there was a lot of strife. It wasn't always easy. But my family were very political, as is the case with a lot of immigrant families. The news was always on. People have views about what was going on. Question Time was watched avidly with Robin Day in those days. And so it was a political family, and as things came up, I remember Margaret Thatcher taking the milk away from schools in the 70s. Margaret Thatcher milk snatcher. I remember some of the issues with my older brothers and some of the older generation, and the real fear of the police at that time. Unemployment,
you know, the ups and downs really. And in those days, of course, black people weren't very represented on TV. We were just on Alf Garnett. You were fringe. You were really at the fringes of society. So that, I think that is all very political and made me very political. I became a lawyer ultimately. I became a barrister. Barristers fix problems one case at a time. You know, you go down to the cells, you meet your client, a young man in prison, you're trying to get him off the next morning in magistrate's court. But often you find yourself as a barrister or as a lawyer thinking, why is the system like this? Why are these young men in prison? What can I do to change the system? This is unfair. And as you journey, as I've journeyed from a working class background to perhaps a more middle class life, that really, really affects you and really touches you. I was very lucky to be the first black Briton to go to Harvard Law School. There I spent a lot of time with African Americans. And
of course, you're alumni of Barack Obama as well.
Barack Obama.
Yeah. What have you learned from Barack?
Learned? Boy, oh boy, oh boy, resilience, I think. You know, you hear criticism of Barack Obama from time to time. You know, he hasn't done this for black people, he hasn't done this, he hasn't done that. What I say to those who say that is, when we've had 44 black presidents of the United States, then we can talk. So I'm a huge fan of Barack Obama. He could do no wrong in my eyes.
Sometimes, David, that charge seems to get levelled against you, that perhaps you're not angry enough, or perhaps you're not representing you know, certain demographics enough. You're not, you know, which, given what you've just said, I don't think that's fair. But how do you answer those detractors?
I spend a lot of time in schools. I spend a lot of time with young black youth. I spend more time with poor black people, I think, than many other Britons, because they're in Tottenham. They're in my surgeries every single week. But one of the things I say to black youth is, listen, don't let others stereotype you and define you. So what that really comes back to is there's one way to be black. That's what it's really about. There's a certain way to be a black man, and if you don't fit the stereotype, and you know what? I haven't fit the stereotype for all of my 42 years on the planet. Thank God! So what I say is tough. Well, if you don't like, you know, I insist on being me. I insist on being me. And that me is someone who is happy to challenge, but also expects responsibility. And that's the way I approach life.
So do you think that there's some young people that don't have a sense of responsibility, or do you think they've got less of a sense of self, why they're able to kind of get dragged into?
Let's take the riots. Let's take the riots.
Yeah.
I remember the first set of riots in Tottenham in 1985. There are those who would concentrate on the 600 on the streets. There are those who would want almost to claim that the 600 on the streets are all young, are all black. I tend to say, one, they're not all young and they're not all black, and I want to concentrate on the 6,000 in Tottenham that are at home, that are scared and frightened, that have to apply for jobs the next week and are worried because this postcode now has... So it's about, where do you want to put your priorities? I'm very clear where I want to put mine.
And of course, you're aiming to put your hat in your ring. You want to run for the Labour nomination for London Mayor. What would you say would be the achievements in Tottenham that would make you a suitable candidate for London Mayor?
Well, look, I think that my story, my background is a story of opportunity. It's a story of, my father came here in 1956 with 6 shillings in his pocket. He had nothing. My family is a very typical Tottenham West Indian family, you know, ups and downs. And I sit here as someone who has sought to push education to the forefront, see the standards of our schools rising in this local community. I have been, I think, a very effective minister for universities. It was me that challenged Oxford and Cambridge about who got to go. Some of your viewers might remember. Because
there was just one
at one stage. There was just one African Caribbean young man. I led, when I was Minister for Culture, the national commemoration of the abolition of the slave trade. And I mean, here in Tottenham, all around us, there are cranes going up. There is regeneration. And indeed, in the toughest moments, and obviously 2011 for us on that Sunday morning was a very tough moment, most people said, thank God for David Lammy, thank God he was there. He answered the call. So in good moments and in tougher moments, I've been there. And in the end, the reason I'm running is because I believe the central issue is housing in London. The central issue is really a city that has much to offer for many, but there are lots of people left out of participating in this city.
How many homes would Mayor Lammy build over the 4 years?
Look, I mean, I think that the commitment of the Labour Party is to build 1 million homes.
In London?
No, they won't be in London. I would suspect 600,000 of them would have to be in London. The question now is how we build those homes. I'm very clear that the private sector cannot deliver
We're
that
talking
entire
about 600,000
amount.
social housing.
No, I'm afraid we're not, and that is the question. At the moment, politicians are talking about this phrase, affordable homes, and the general public know that they see the cranes going up and these houses are not for them. They're not affordable. 80% of market value, which is 470,000 for the average house in London, is not affordable to most people when the average salary in London is 36,000. So I think as mayor I would really question that, and I think there has to be some catalytic intervention. It has to be raced around the public sector. It's appalling that in London we built 40 council houses last year, just 40.
Okay, so it's 2020. You've spent 4 years as mayor for London. What's your defining legacy?
I think we have got back to house building. I think that we will see more social housing. I think that London's feeling more integrated and united. I think that some of the cost of living crisis that people are feeling around fares and other things, they're not feeling in quite the same way. London is coming together, and also there's a celebration of London. You know, cities are also about fun. I think of growing up at Notting Hill Carnival. They're about how we come together to celebrate who we are. And we captured that very well during the Olympics. So I hope that we can capture that spirit also under my mayoralty.
Actually,
I think we'll also see under me a lot more social programmes. I care about issues like fatherhood, how we support young fathers. I care about those young men and women in London who have criminal records and how they access the employment market. I'd want to see employers really stepping up. So many more social programmes, I think, if I were able to come, similar to what you can see in New York under Cory Booker in Newark.
Should the race equality dimension of all policies in London be considered?
Well, look, I think race has dropped off the agenda under this government. It needs to be back firmly on the agenda. All of the surveys suggest that if you are, you know, if you have an African sounding name or a Muslim sounding name, you have to send out 40% more CVs than those that don't. So, of course, in this city, with as many people arriving, we have to be clear on both discrimination and equality, and we have to challenge it.
Ken Livingstone, the former London Labour mayor, introduced or started to introduce procurement. That you know, he wanted to make sure that public contracts had built-in equality safeguards, so that those private companies that were taking public funds were also delivering, or at least not discriminating, you know, when they are actually taking on that service. What do you make of that?
He was absolutely right about that.
Is that something you would do?
That's the kind of de minimis standard. Absolutely right. Fundamental. You've got to have people running small businesses here in this city. Many of your viewers will fit into that category, able to access both what local government procures, what the city mayor procures, and what Quangos and others within the public sector procure. They should not be shut out of accessing that opportunity. That story began actually many years ago with the Olympics in Atlanta. And there we had a city, sometimes in quotation marks, very much a black city. And black entrepreneurs said, can we access a bit of the Olympics, please? Can it not just be Coca-Cola? And actually it produced a whole generation of millionaires that is now facilitating that city's growth and trickling down in all sorts of ways. London has to be doing that on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, not a sclerotic basis. Boris has rolled all of that back. The challenge for the next mayor is not just to repeat what Ken did, but somehow to work a way of entrenching it so that a future mayor cannot roll it back again.
Okay, Boris is kind of, to my mind, seen as a business mayor. He's got very close relationships with a lot of the big business community. Some of the things you're saying may put you at odds with those demographics, big business. Do you think that's true?
I hope not. You know, I'm very proud of my background as a barrister, as a city lawyer. I've got many friends and colleagues who are in business, and actually I spend a lot of time with business. Some of my biggest supporters are from business. And what I'm saying about housing, actually business agrees with, because they're experiencing that their employees are coming in from miles and having to pay huge transport costs. What I'm saying about families, business agrees with, because actually they want to see fathers supporting their communities as well. They recognise that there's a cost of living challenge. But yes, I am prepared to challenge big business. The last few weeks I've been challenging Premiership clubs. It is unacceptable to have a football player making £250,000 a week, more than the vast majority of Londoners make in a lifetime, but not prepared to pay their security guard, their caterer, their groundsman, the living wage. That is unacceptable. And, you know, so absolutely, I'm quite happy to challenge the Premiership. I'm very pleased that Spurs have stepped up and are paying their direct employees the living wage. But that's how Chelsea have joined it. You have to battle when you're an MP and call for what is fair. So, yes, you challenge sometimes, but also you work with. In the end, this is a city of opportunity. And it is also the opportunity to make money, the opportunity to make profit, the opportunity to set up a business, the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. A city will die if it is not about those things. And absolutely, I would stand by those things.
Yeah. Now, of course, a short while ago, when there was a Labour leadership contest, you nominated Diane Abbott to run for leader of the Labour Party. Of course, now she's also in the contest to be London mayor. I suppose that's gratitude for you. But what makes you a better mayor than Diane?
Oh, look, that's for Londoners who want to participate in the primary to decide.
Okay.
I nominated Diane to be to lead the Labour Party. Those of you who follow these things closely will know that she had to persuade 25 MPs to vote for her, and she didn't have the numbers. And I persuaded a number of MPs, people like Jack Straw, Phil Wallace at the time, a number of MPs, Stephen Twigg, who were going to vote for David Miliband, to lend their vote to Diane Abbott. And that took a lot of work and a lot of effort. And I'm proud that I did that. I'm proud that I put a black woman on the ballot, even though I suspect she was never going to win the leadership. There were 4 white men, and she really shook it up.
She's been in the Labour Party for so long, and she's such a big character. Why is she so unpopular?
You'd have to get Diane on the show and ask her about her.
As her colleague, you must have some kind of.
You'd have to ask her about her.
Well, she couldn't get 25 people to vote. Do you understand? It's not good.
You'd have to ask her about that. Let's see. I know that I am very determined to run for London mayor.
Yes.
Let's see where Diane arrives at. I hope we don't have to run against each other. I think that's a shame.
Yes.
But if we do, then I'm quite sure we will remain friends at the end of the race.
Can I just ask you about the Labour primaries, because that's something which has caused a bit of controversy. Of course, primaries being the system where non-Labour members can vote in the selection. Now, in America, you don't have to pay a fee. The Labour Party at the moment is proposing £3. It was higher previously. Do you think it should be free?
I'd love it to be free. I think the bar has got to be as low as possible, and ordinary people can say, I like what David Lammy's saying. I'm going to vote in that primary because I want him to be the candidate. I vote Labour on the whole. I'm going to vote for David Lammy. I'm going to vote for Diane Abbott. The Labour Party were proposing it should be £10. not a lot of people £10. I argued very fiercely in the media and within the party. They dropped it to £3. It's still a bar. You know, the French socialists tried it. They had a big success. They charged €1. So £3 is a lot more than €1, clearly.
Why are they charging at all? Is it a way of trying to
They
prevent?
say there's an administration fee. There is an administration to run the thing, and that probably is right. So I wish it could be lower or nothing at all, but that's not where we are. But I really encourage any of your viewers, if you want me to be the next Mayor of London, if you want to wake up at the end of July and David Lammy is the Labour nominee for Mayor of London, and I think your viewers understand how history-making that would be, how, frankly, it is a long way from Broadwater Farm Estate, where I grew up, to City Hall, then I would encourage them to visit my website and to participate in the primary. Or indeed, if there's another candidate that you prefer, to participate, get involved. Don't just sit back. Pay £3 and determine the fate of this.
I was going to ask you something about that, because both previous mayors, Ken and Boris, seem to have very high profiles, quite large public personas, larger than life public personas for different reasons. Do you think that your public persona is strong enough to, to cut through the media and go through as Mayor for London? And if it's not, how will you improve your profile?
Well, I've got a public persona here in London. I'm not Ken. I'm not Boris.
So we've got Red Ken, we've got Bojo
I'm not a joker. I'm not a joker. That's not consistent with being the MP for Tottenham. Frankly, it's not consistent with my story. But, I think there are a lot of people watching who want something a bit different, serious in places. We've got some real challenges. I don't want to be Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson has not delivered on housing. Fares rise on the tube year after year after year. He's a laugh, but actually, do you know what? If you're a cleaner or a minicab driver, you're not really making much money. You're living in a council place. It's not funny. It's just not funny, and I represent something very different.
I had another question for you about your challenging circumstances, obviously, which has made you very empathetic to people that are poorer, who have more difficult circumstances. How do you directly translate that empathy into action?
Good question. Look, the Mayor has not got all the powers we would like him to have. I think there's a lot the Mayor can do with his funds. There's a lot the Mayor can do with the public land he owns. But the Mayor has a massive bully pulpit. And all credit to Boris Johnson and Ken Livingstone before. Both of them have enhanced the role of Mayor. The Mayor has a lot of influence to shout about a lot of things. Again, I say to your viewers, if you want someone shouting about the things you care about, and not some of the junk that you read in the papers coming from Boris Johnson that's fringe and irrelevant to your lives, then you have an opportunity to participate and select me as the candidate, and you will get that. And for the first time in a long while, you'll actually have someone wouldn't it be amazing to have someone who actually walked the corridors of Broadwater Farm, walk the corridors of power in City Hall? That's the question.
Why don't you invite him down to Broadwater Farm? I would love to actually see.
I don't want to embarrass him. I suspect that I don't know if the reception will be warm.
Yeah. Go on, Alex.
No, I was saying I think you should invite him down. The one question I did have, I'm not a Boris fan, as anybody that knows me will know and read my blog. There's lots of stuff on there. But one thing he has done that I think is quite good is he's advocated for cyclists, and I'm a keen cyclist, and I kind of have to. I've stopped cycling so much because of all the deaths on the road and things like that, and so I think that's one thing I can say he's done. He's advocated for cyclists. Will you be continuing with the cycle superhighway and that kind of thing?
Look, I think that I absolutely would give Boris credit for being an advocate of cyclists. Yeah. I don't know if the action has followed. There are too many cyclists being killed on the streets. We haven't got a superhighway. There are issues, I think, about cycling proficiency across London. There are a lot of people who cycle but don't really know how to cycle, and a lot of the young people particularly are not getting the proficiency that they need to survive on the roads. I cycle as well. I tend to cycle these days on the canalways, in the parks with my kids. I'm not on the roads on a day-to-day basis. It's just too dangerous, frankly. So he has been a champion for cyclists, but what we now need is a mayor that's going to deliver some action for cyclists. There are issues about the proportion of the budget under TfL that goes to cycling. I think it needs to increase.
Yeah. Which brings me on to another question I wanted to ask, which is that it's interesting that Boris Johnson as mayor has tried to leave certain things as legacies. You've got the Boris bikes, you've got the zip wire, and you've got the route masters as well. What sort of things would you leave London as long-lasting legacies of Mayor Lammy?
Surely over a decade, the most important legacy is a roof over your head. We're sitting here in a constituency with the highest homelessness in the country.
I'm talking about more tangible things, more sort of
Well, I visited France, and Paris has a fantastic something called the Autolib, which is Boris cars, if you like, but we're not going to call them Boris cars. Let's call them lammy cars. Or laminators, and what they are, is the ability not to have to own a car, but literally to be able to pick one up, a zip car, and drive it to another point, and someone else picks it up, and it's a whole network. So that is something that I think we could accelerate in London, and I'd hope to be able to do.
We do have some boroughs that have that, but you want
to... It's kind of ironic, because I don't really drive,
Yeah.
But I think we need a scheme that works all over London, similar to Boris Bikes, and let's call it the Laminator.
Okay.
Have you had any advice from either Ken or Boris about being mayor for London? Any tips?
Ken says, I don't want to get involved, I want to pick a candidate, they're all my friends. Ken was a detail merchant. He really got into the detail, and he encourages, I think, all of us to get into the detail. Boris, no, Boris hasn't offered advice. He just sort of jokes, doesn't he? But I've got a feeling Boris would like, I don't know, a sort of famous celebrity Tory to be the next mayor of London.
Boris Johnson abolished the London Development Agency, a sort of regeneration organisation. Would you bring it back? And what are your plans for
That's a very, very good question. I do think that Boris has gutted the capacity of City Hall through agencies to deliver a lot, and I would certainly want to see more delivery mechanism coming out of the mayor's office, more coordinating mechanism coming out of the mayor. I don't think that is a return of the London Development Agency, but I'm worried that the capacity of the centre to make things happen has been diminished. And but I also want to just put this in. The mayor needs more power, but the power should not just be to the mayor. It's also power to local authorities. Local authorities are really on their knees.
And the Assembly.
It's so sad. And the Assembly scrutiny of power. But it's so sad to see youth services cut, to see daycare centres cut, to see parks falling behind again. Those sorts of civic things that really make a difference in your immediate life.
Well, would you like to see more tax-raising powers, or the start of tax-raising powers for London?
I think that London should have more fiscal devolution. I think that the mayor should have more leverage over business rates he should keep. Over part of capital gains he could have. The money should stay in the city to do things in the city is the point. That's why I've raised concerns about a mansion tax. 90% of the tax raised in London and 77% of it spent in London feels unfair to me. It's being spent all around the country. Why should George Osborne, who represents the seat somewhere up north, and Danny Alexander, Chief Secretary, who represents the seat in Scotland, be determining the fate of what will be close to 10 million people in this city? No, I think it should be the mayor, and yes, of course, he should retain his local taxation.
Alex?
Yeah. Do you think that, in light of what you said about the housing crisis, that affects a great part of the population in the Greenbelt? You're obviously going to come up against, the NIMBY kind of lobby there. How are you going to deal with that?
So what I've said is, look, at the moment we're selling off playing fields in inner London to save car parks in outer London because of the Greenbelt, which has not been reviewed. since 1951. So I do think if we're serious about building a generation of houses for a younger generation, then we've got to start thinking about building on the green belt those car parks.
We're just running out of time, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for putting me through my paces. It's
great.
great.
Really appreciate you coming on.
It's my new comms director, just over there.
He's talking about me.
Just coming up after the break, we'll be going live to Brixton, where we'll be joining Simon Woolley of Operation Black Vote with his launch of his battle bus. So stay with us after the break for that.
Of mine, Nigeria on my mind, born in diversity, blessed beyond compare.
Àsìkò ìbò tuntun dé fún àwọn ará Nàìjíríà tá lè fẹ́ yàn fún ìjọba Nàìjíríà ṣé PDP ní àbí APC àbí pátì mìíràn tó wà níta. Ẹ má jọ kán lóyún fún ìjà tó bẹ́ẹ̀ láti yan anybody ní Nàìjíríà torí bẹ́ẹ̀ la fi sọ pé kẹ́ lo nǹkan tó wà lọ́wọ́ yín ìgbò kan ìyàn kan kẹ́ fún ẹni tó yẹ kó jẹ́ ẹni tó dáa fún Nàìjíríà nǹkan tá a sọ fún gbogbo ayé nìyẹn ẹ jẹ́ ó dáa fún wa ní Nàìjíríà ẹ jọ̀ọ́.
In our unity, peace, our destiny. Here we are. Standing tall. We are one. We are 100 of unity. Nigeria. We will stand.
Salamu alaikum mutanenmu na 'yan arewa lokaci mutanenmu na 'yan Najeriya lokacin siyasa ya matso. Yanzu ga yana an ce a ta yi siyasa. Abin da muke roƙon mutane kowa da kowa kan ku yadda a sanya ku kuje ku yaƙi kuje ku faɗa saboda siyasa ne siyasa ku je ku ɗauki wanda za ku ke so in PDP ce ko APC in Buhari ne ko Goodluck tsakanin ku ga Allah ku ɗauki wanda ya kamata ku zaɓi wanda ya kamata saboda haka muna roƙo muna addu'a Allah ya taimaka mana a Najeriya.
Welcome back to the Big Ben Show with me, Lester Holloway and Alex Watson. We had David Lammy there, Labour MP for Tottenham and also would-be mayoral candidate for London. Now, as promised, we're now hopefully going to go live to Brixton to talk about the launch of Operation Black Vote's election registration campaign. They've got a battle bus called the Express Bus, which is touring Britain, and it should be in Brixton as we speak. Hopefully we have on the line the director of Operation Black Vote, Simon Woolley. Good afternoon, Simon. No, we don't have Simon yet on the line, so while we're hoping to get hold of him, let's discuss the election campaign and the registration of black and ethnic minorities, because this has traditionally been an issue where black communities have under-registered to vote, but clearly, you know, black communities do have the power if we do register.
Well, say 40% of Londoners are from black or ethnic minorities, so and that's just from London, but across the UK. So do we know the figures of how many percentage of black and ethnic minorities vote? Do we know that figure? Or
well, we do. I mean, the Runnymede Trust did some statistics after the last election, which was looking at it and breaking it down to the various different, you know, ethnic minority categories.
Yeah.
And I think what it was showing was two things. One is that with virtually every ethnic minority group, there is an under-registration. But when we're talking about the people who've actually registered to vote, the proportion of actually going out and casting a vote was about the same.
Right.
But clearly there's a deficit because people are not registering in the first place.
Right. Yeah. So that's half of the problem. So I mean, it'd be good when we speak to Simon, but there is this kind of debate at the moment about not voting. It's become quite a big thing in the public mind. You know, there's been the whole Russell Brand thing where he spoke to Paxman and said, you know, he says, why bother voting, because there is no mandate. They don't, politics isn't working, it's broken.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
how would you, I mean, as a person that's keenly interested in the political debate, how would you, what would your argument to not voting be?
Well, I believe that people should vote. Whoever they vote for is totally up to them.
Yeah.
But if you really don't have anybody to vote for, then just go and spoil your ballot paper, because it is actually counted. It does still add to the totals of people who've voted in the first place.
So what does the difference between spoiling your ballot and not voting at all?
Well, it means that if you don't vote, then nobody knows that you've not voted. You simply are not taking part in
you can say there's
the electoral system.
Right.
I mean, there is a suggestion which I made on my blog recently, which is that maybe we should change the way that people spoil their ballots, so that if there are more spoiled ballots than the winning candidate, perhaps nobody should win, and that we should hold the election all over again.
Right. Okay. But then that would leave us in a state of not being governed at all.
Well, it could be, or the other way of doing it, perhaps, is to have a minus vote for every sport ballot against a particular candidate's name.
I can see that you've thought about this. You can see that you've thought about it.
And anybody who actually gets a minus figure is banned from ever running again.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's one way. That's one way of dealing with it, I suppose.
But let's just hold that thought for now. What we're going to do is go for a quick break and see whether in that break we can get that link to Brixton. So don't go away, and hopefully, touch wood, we will be back with Simon Woolley.
My mind, born in diversity, blessed beyond compare.
àsìkò ìbò tuntun dé fún àwọn ará Nàìjíríà tá lè fẹ́ yàn fún ìjọba Nàìjíríà, ṣé PDP ní àbí APC àbí pátì mìíràn tó wà níta. Ẹ má jọ kán lóyìn fún ìjà tó bẹ́ẹ̀ láti yan anybody ní Nàìjíríà. Torí bẹ́ẹ̀ la fi sọ pé kẹ́ lo nǹkan tó wà lọ́wọ́ yín, ìgbò kan, èèyàn kan, kẹ́ fún ẹni tó yẹ kó jẹ́ ẹni tó dáa fún Nàìjíríà. Nǹkan tá ń sọ fún gbogbo ayé nìyẹn. Ẹ jẹ́ ó dáa fún wa ní Nàìjíríà, ẹ jọ̀ọ́.
In our unity, peace, our destiny. Here we are, standing tall. We're standing tall, standing tall. We are one. We are one. 100 years of unity. Nigeria. We will stand.
Salamu alaikum mutanenmu na 'yan Arewa, lokaci mutanenmu na 'yan Najeriya lokacin siyasa ya matso. Yanzu ga yana an ce a ta yi siyasa. Abin da muke roƙon mutane kowa da kowa, kar ku yadda a sanya ku kuje ku yi yaƙi, kuje ku yi faɗa. Saboda siyasa siyasa ku je ku ɗauki wanda za ku ke so. In PDP ce ko APC, in Buhari ne ko Gul.
Hello, welcome back to the Big Ben Show with me, Lester Holloway, and Alex Watson. And we have now eventually managed to re-establish contact with Brixton in South London, where Operation Black Vote are launching their battle bus called the Express Bus, which is going to be touring Britain, signing up black and ethnic minorities to the electoral register. Hopefully, there's a picture of the bus there on the screen. Obviously, it's raining at the moment, and we have, I believe, on the line the director of Operation Black Vote, Simon Woolley. Good afternoon, Simon.
Good afternoon. You've got me on the line on the bus with this historic occasion where we're launching OBV Express, the start of our nationwide tour. It's been a wet day, but a glorious day, because still many people have showed up and made their declaration, Lester, that we demand to be listened to.
Yeah, we're just looking at a picture of the bus there, and it's got the word ultimate sacrifice on there. Well, what does that mean?
Well, it is, because I think people around the country should know that we paid our contribution, and with the ultimate sacrifice in 2 world wars. And so it's not just the ultimate sacrifice, but in terms of the NHS, in terms of business, arts, anywhere you look in this society, we paid our contribution. Now we should be politically strong to ensure that these institutions work for us not against them.
And of course, we're looking at a picture of you there, with just behind Rosa Parks, of course, who famously refused to give up her seat on the bus in the civil rights struggle.
That's right. Look, this is symbolic in many ways. We put Rosa Parks at the front of the bus. Part of her journey is our journey, not just metaphorical, but also a physical journey too. And so we want to inspire Africans, we want to inspire your constituency that are loyal followers of MTV, that this is our time, but it's only our time if we make a declaration by registering to vote.
Hi Simon, it's Alex, co-presenting with Leicester here. I wanted to ask you, what is the purpose of the bus, and what will people do once they get onto the bus?
Well, on the bus, it's a bit like NASA in here. There's a bank of 30 computers, and even in this rain, we've been registering many people to register to vote. See, people think registering to vote is an end in of itself, but it isn't. It's a means to an end.
So do they have to fill out some kind of online form? Is that what happens?
It's an online form. You can register people to vote online. But when you register, basically it's a declaration that tells the political class, I demand to be listened to. And when you demand to be listened to, politically, specifically, collectively, then you're able to say, I demand to be listened to when it comes to black unemployment. I demand to be listened to when it comes to the criminal justice system and the way that ill treats black people. I demand to be listened to in terms of representation.
So where's the bus going to be going? I know you said you're going to be going all over the UK.
Well, today it's in Brixton, tomorrow it's in Barking and Dagenham, on Saturday Ilford, Thurrock on Sunday, and then we travel on the outer skirts of London, Croydon, Hammersmith. It is a national tour that will go on right up until the last day on April the 21st, which is the last day of voter registration.
How many people do you aim to register, Simon?
Yes, when people come on board, we can register them online. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Now, do you have targets for the number of people that you really want to get?
We want to engage with over 1 million people, and we think we can with this, and with our voter registration app, which we're launching next week. This is our time, Leicester, but we must show our intent that we can decide over 168 marginal seats. The fantastic research that you wrote for us over a year ago now, that is the bedrock for this campaign. Now it's the hard work. Now it's getting onto the road and inspiring a generation.
And what are people saying when they get on the bus? Because presumably there must be some conversations about why vote in the first place. So what are you saying to that?
Well, first and foremost, that the people are inspired by getting on the bus and seeing how black people are working things out for themselves and empowering each other. So they're inspired by this NASA-looking bus, which has computers everywhere. But secondly, they said, well, who do I vote for? Why should I vote? And they said, look, we vote for ourselves. We vote for our dignity. We vote to demand that political parties address our concerns. So we're non-partisan, but we are political. And we collectively say we demand racial and social justice.
But Simon, when you say that we vote for ourselves, at the moment, if we're looking at the proportion of ethnic minority MPs in the House of Commons, it's 8.2%. There's not much opportunity to vote for ourselves at the moment.
No, but in terms of voting for ourselves, Lester, what we're saying is we vote for the values. We vote for addressing our concerns. That's what we're voting for.
Yes.
That's voting for ourselves. Look,
Quick fun question, Simon, at the end. Have you got any speakers on the bus? You know, any loudspeakers?
Loudspeakers are on the bus, TV monitors, the work. This is 21st century activism that is on the road.
So you're going to be pumping some music through that?
We'll be pumping some music. It's difficult to pump the music today simply because of the rain. We didn't want the speakers to burst. But come and join the bus, come and join the journey, and come and join this movement that will transform British politics.
Yeah, sorry we couldn't be there today, but of course we're in the studio. But thank you so much for joining us, Simon. We hope to be catching up with you and the rest of your journey with the Express registration battle bus, which is at the moment in Brixton. If you are in Brixton, get along to Windrush Square, whether you are registered to vote or not, and certainly if you're not registered to vote. We're just at the end of the show, so just time to thank my fellow co-presenter Alex Watson, Simon Woolley and David Lammy, the Labour MP for Tottenham and would-be Labour candidate for Mayor. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back this time next week, Thursday at 1 o'clock. So see you then and have a great week.
Bye.
Salamu alaikum mutanen mu na 'yan arewa, lokaci mutanen mu na 'yan Najeriya lokacin